In 1965, a man quietly bought 47 square miles of Florida swampland. He used fake names to hide who he really was. He set up dummy companies and fake mailing addresses. Even his own lawyers didn't know who they truly worked for. Local landowners sold their property for a few $100s an acre. They believed they were selling to some small out-of-state businessman. They weren't. They were selling to Walt Disney himself. By the time anyone realized the truth, it was too late. Disney now owned land twice the size of Manhattan. Nobody could stop what was coming next. Here's what almost nobody talks about. Disney World doesn't make most of its money from the rides. It doesn't even make most of its money from tickets. A single-day ticket now costs over $150. The rides, the castles, the fireworks, that's just the surface. Underneath it all sits one of the most aggressive financial machines ever built. It's disguised as the happiest place on Earth. Once you see how it actually works, you can't unsee it. It all starts with the land. When Walt Disney scouted a second park location, he carried a bitter lesson. Disneyland in Anaheim, California had been a massive hit. Millions of people showed up every year, but almost none of that success made it into Disney's pocket. Motels sprang up across the street from the park. Restaurants and souvenir shops followed close behind. Gas stations lined the roads leading in. All of them cashed in on the crowds Disney had created. None of them paid Disney a single dollar for the privilege. Walt watched other businesses get rich off his idea. He decided it would never happen again. So in Florida, he didn't buy a park's worth of land, he bought a small country's worth of land instead, enough that no one could ever build a motel across the street. There was no across the street anymore. There was only Disney, stretching in every direction for miles. That single decision became the root of everything that followed. Once you own the land, you don't just own the park. You own the hotels where people sleep, you own the restaurants where people eat, you own the parking lots and the monorail. You own the golf courses and the water parks. You even own the roads that lead visitors in. Nearly every dollar a visitor spends can end up in the same place. Most families visit Disney World for 4 or 5 days. Some stay for an entire week. For that whole time, they live inside property owned by one company. They rarely notice it because it doesn't feel like a corporation. It feels like an entire world of its own. That's not an accident. That's the business model. Tickets seem like the main event, but they are not where the real leverage is. Think about how a Disney trip actually unfolds. A family buys their park tickets months in advance. Then they book a room at a Disney resort. Staying on property means early access to the rides. It also means free transportation everywhere they go. A theme runs through every hallway, every pool, every detail. Then they buy the Disney dining plan. Eating at Disney restaurants without one gets expensive fast. The plan feels like the smart choice, but Disney priced it so the company still comes out ahead. Next comes Genie Plus. Then Lightning Lane passes for the most popular rides. A 2-hour wait suddenly feels unacceptable on an expensive vacation. Then come the photos. Disney photographers wait at exactly the right moments. One is positioned right as you meet Mickey Mouse. Another captures the exact second a roller coaster drops. Another catches your child's face lighting up with joy. None of those photos are free. You pay per photo or you buy a full package. By the time you decide, you already know you'll want it forever. Then come the souvenirs. The stuffed animals lining every gift shop shelf. Mickey ears with your child's name stitch on, popcorn packets that cost more than the popcorn itself. None of these purchases feel like a mistake in the moment. Each one, on its own, feels small and reasonable. Each one feels worth it even. That's the design. Disney doesn't need one big purchase from you. It needs 100 small yeses over 5 days. By the drive home, those small yeses add up to thousands of dollars. A family of 4 can spend $6,000 to $8,000 in a week. Most of them will tell you it was worth every penny. That's the part that should quietly unsettle you. It's not a trick that leaves people feeling cheated. It's a system so smooth that people leave grateful. But even that isn't the deepest layer. Go back to the land for a second. Disney did something in Florida almost no company has ever been allowed to do. In 1967, Florida granted Disney control over the Reedy Creek Improvement District. On paper, it sounded like ordinary bureaucracy. In practice, it handed Disney the power of a local government. Disney wrote its own zoning laws. It set its own building codes. It ran its own fire department. It controlled its own utilities. For more than 50 years, it operated almost like its own city-state. It answered to almost nobody but itself. It decided what got built and how, without asking the surrounding counties. Think about what that actually means. A company writing its own rules for its own kingdom, quite literally. That arrangement stayed in place for decades. In 2022, it became a political flashpoint. Florida's government moved to dissolve Disney's special district. The political fight changed some of the details, but for 50 years, Disney held control that shaped the parks completely. That control existed long before most visitors today were even born. Now let's talk about something nobody notices in the churro line: EPCOT. Walt Disney's original idea for EPCOT wasn't a theme park at all. It stood for the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. Walt genuinely wanted it to be a real, functioning city. People would actually live there. People would work there too. It would test new ideas in architecture and transportation. Walt spoke about it with real excitement until the very end. He died in 1966, before a single piece of it was built. After Walt died, Disney executives studied his blueprint for a living city. They decided it was too risky, too expensive, too uncertain. So they built something else instead. They built a park instead, a permanent World's Fair. It was dressed up with corporate pavilions. Companies like General Motors, Kraft, and Exxon sponsored them. Each company paid Disney to put its name in front of millions of visitors. Walt wanted to build the future. What got built instead was an advertisement shaped like the future. That same pattern repeats throughout the park's entire history. Something built for wonder, quietly wired for revenue. Look at the way the rides are placed. Look at the way pathways curve instead of running straight. You're never more than a few dozen steps from a themed shop. None of it is random. Disney employs actual behavioral designers. Their job is to study how people move through space. They study where visitors slow down. They study where a visitor's guard drops. They study exactly where people are most likely to spend. The parks are engineered environments, down to the smallest detail. Every bench is placed on purpose. Even the scent of baked goods is pumped through vents deliberately. Even the spontaneous parades are timed to pass certain shops. All of it is calculated, tested, and tested again. And it works because it never feels like it's working on you. It feels like magic instead. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. Merchandise alone brings in billions of dollars a year. Not tickets, not food, merchandise. The Mickey ears, the plush toys. The collector pins traded almost like currency. A character-shaped popcorn bucket can retail for over $20. Disney sells them by the hundreds of thousands. Sometimes there are lines just to buy the bucket alone. No ride involved, just the bucket. People wait in line for the right to give Disney more money, and they walk away happy about it. Now, step back even further. Disney doesn't just profit from Disney World. It profits from you long before you ever arrive. The movies feed the same machine. So do the shows on its streaming service. So do the toy lines sold in stores nowhere near Orlando. A kid falls in love with a character on a screen at home. That happens years before ever setting foot in a park. By the time that child stands before a real castle, the emotional groundwork has already been laid. It was built quietly over dozens of hours of screen time. The park isn't selling an experience from scratch. It's cashing in on years of attachment built somewhere else. That's the real engine underneath everything. Disney doesn't need to convince you once you're inside the park. It spent years convincing you before you ever booked the trip. By the time a family walks through the gates, the selling is already done. What's left is just execution. Years of attachment get turned into a week of purchases. It's timed so precisely that nobody notices the machine underneath the fireworks. Maybe that's the part worth sitting with. The lights come up. The parade has passed. Crowds head for the exits, bags full of ears and popcorn buckets. They carry photos they'll treasure for years. None of it feels like a transaction while it's happening. It feels like a memory being made. In a strange way, both things are true at once. The joy is real. A child's tears meeting their favorite character, that's real too. But underneath it all sits a company with decades of experience. It figured out how to turn wonder into revenue, and it did it without ever letting the wonder feel cheap. Walt Disney bought a swamp under a fake name decades ago. He didn't want anyone else profiting off what he built. In the end, nobody ever built anything close to it. Whatever got built next, small or large, happy or grand, it all led back to him.